They say betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock politely on your door. It seeps in quietly, like water through a cracked pipe, until one day, everything you thought was solid just crumbles. I never imagined it would happen to me. Not with him. Not with us. On the surface, my life looked perfect. I had a husband I loved, a home we worked hard to build, and a sense of security most people dream about. We laughed together, argued occasionally, but always made up. I trusted him completely. I believed in us. Every morning I would wake up next to him, and for a fleeting moment, the world felt calm, predictable, safe. And yet, something in the air began to shift. At first it was tiny, almost unnoticeable. He started disappearing behind closed doors for longer than usual. I would hear him talking on the phone, hushed voices and sudden silences that didn't feel natural. Bills that had always been on time started missing, or strange purchases appeared on our statements. I rationalized it. Maybe he was stressed at work. Maybe he was handling something important. I didn't want to believe that the calm could be an illusion. Then came the subtle changes in him. A glance that lingered a little too long at his phone, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, messages that appeared and disappeared in seconds, just as I walked into the room. I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that the life we built together was real. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered warnings I tried to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was pulling away, that something was hiding behind his carefully constructed smiles. It wasn't fear yet. Not really. It was curiosity, a prickling sense that something was off, that the life I thought I knew was teetering on the edge of an unseen cliff. I should have listened to that voice, but I didn't. I convinced myself it was paranoia, that everything was fine, that the money, the late nights, the secrecy, it was all nothing. I had no idea that beneath that calm, the storm was already gathering, and soon, everything I trusted, everything I believed about him, about us, would come crashing down in ways I could never have imagined. It started small, a few dollars here, a few dollars there, nothing that screamed danger. But little by little, I noticed the pattern. Bills that were paid automatically suddenly bounced. Withdrawals I didn't recognize showed up on our bank statements. At first, I told myself I must be mistaken. Maybe I forgot, maybe there was a glitch, maybe I was just imagining things. And yet, the gnawing feeling refused to leave. When I asked him about it, he smiled. That practiced, calm smile that had always reassured me. "It's just some bank mistake," he said. "Don't worry about it, I'll handle it." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He had a way of speaking that could twist doubt into comfort, a way of making lies feel like truth. But the warmth in his voice didn't reach his eyes. There was a coldness there I hadn't noticed before, a subtle distance that made me question everything I thought I knew. He was present, but not really there. His laughter felt rehearsed, his compliments hollow. I tried to brush it off as stress, tiredness, too much work, anything to keep the illusion of normalcy alive. It was my best friend Lena who first voiced what I dared not admit to myself. Over coffee one Saturday morning, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Something feels off with him. I don't know what, but I've known you too long to ignore it." Her words stung, but they also ignited the spark of truth I had been trying to bury. I smiled, thanked her, and pushed her concerns aside. I couldn't face it yet. Days passed, and the unease grew heavier. My instincts whispered warnings I refused to listen to. I kept convincing myself I was imagining it, that paranoia was making mountains out of molehills. But one night changed everything. I had stayed up late, checking the statements again, scrolling through notifications I didn't fully understand. And then, in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, I saw it. A transaction that made my stomach drop. My pulse quickened, and for the first time, I felt fear that could no longer be ignored. Something was very wrong. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just odd behavior. It was a feeling, a truth my mind had tried to deny, now screaming at me in a way I could no longer ignore. My intuition, the quiet voice I had silenced for weeks, refused to stay quiet any longer. That night, I realized that the cracks weren't small anymore. The mirror of our life together was splintering, and whatever lay behind those splinters would change everything I thought I knew about him. I never thought I'd have to face numbers on a screen that would make my heart stop. But there it was, glaring at me in black and white. $43,000. Gone. I froze, staring at the balance of our joint account like it might magically refill itself if I looked long enough. My hands shook. My mind raced. How could this happen? Every memory of trust, every shared plan, every quiet night where I had assumed everything was safe. It all came crashing down in an instant. When I confronted him, his reaction was eerily calm. "Relax," he said. "I moved some money into an investment. I had to cover some bills. Nothing to worry about." His words were measured, deliberate, rehearsed. But they didn't match the flicker in his eyes, the subtle hesitation that betrayed the truth he tried so hard to hide. I wanted to believe him. I wanted the fear gnawing at my gut to be a false alarm. But the doubt had grown too strong, like a shadow that wouldn't go away. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, my coffee long gone cold, scrolling through every transaction, every message, every tiny digital breadcrumb he thought I wouldn't notice. I started keeping records secretly, screenshots, logs, timestamps. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. The tension built with every discovery. Every little inconsistency felt like a piece of a puzzle I wasn't ready to see. The calm facade he wore in the daylight hours began to crumble in my mind, revealing the chaos underneath. And then, I saw it. A name I didn't recognize. One single line that made my stomach twist and my hands freeze over the keyboard. It wasn't a bill, it wasn't a vague company, it was a person. Someone connected to him in ways I didn't want to imagine. My pulse thundered in my ears. My fingers hovered, trembling. I wanted to look away, to convince myself it was nothing, just another error. But I couldn't. Something told me that this name was the key to everything. The reason the money was gone. The reason my trust had been shattered. I shut the laptop slowly, my mind racing, heart pounding. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The calm I had clung to for years was gone. And with that name burning in my mind, I realized the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. I couldn't sleep that night. The name I had seen on the transaction kept replaying in my mind like a warning I could no longer ignore. I kept turning it over, syllable by syllable, trying to convince myself it was meaningless. Just some random person. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something about it felt too deliberate, too personal. The next morning, I quietly started digging. I scrolled through old messages, emails, and social media threads I had never paid much attention to before. And then it hit me. The name wasn't random. It was her. His ex-girlfriend, the one he had sworn was just a memory. Nothing more, the one I had been told never mattered. The shock hit me like a punch I couldn't see coming. Every laugh, every whispered promise, every late night he had justified suddenly felt like a lie meticulously planned. The trust I had built my life around was a fragile illusion. I felt a cold, heavy weight settle in my chest. I remembered the stories he had told me about her, how they had moved on, how it was long ago, how he had changed. And yet there it was, evidence that the past wasn't gone. It was alive, and it was feeding on the present. $43,000 gone, sent directly into her hands. I felt my hands tremble as I held the phone, staring at the proof. Every rational part of me wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to confront him immediately. But another part, the part that had been quietly observing, collecting, preparing, whispered, "Not yet. Wait. Watch. Know the full story before you act." The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal, intimate, invasive. He had taken my life, my trust, and handed it over to someone else. Every memory of us together now carried a shadow. Every touch, every smile, every whispered "I love you" suddenly felt hollow. I felt a storm rising inside me. Sadness, disbelief, anger, and an urge for justice so intense it made my hands clench into fists. But I didn't let it show. I acted normal, pretending everything was fine, all while secretly gathering evidence, documenting every call, every transfer, every small lie he thought I wouldn't notice. And then the unthinkable happened. I found a message, a single text from him to her sent just days before. It wasn't just casual conversation. It was planning, secretive, detailed, calculated. That's when the reality hit me fully. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He had orchestrated a web of lies, manipulations, and theft that stretched far beyond what I could have imagined. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing. The man I had loved, the life I had trusted, the future I had believed in. All of it had been shadowed by a ghost from his past. And that ghost was very much alive. As I stared into the darkness, a single thought consumed me. He thought he could get away with it. But he had no idea that I was already watching, already planning, and that the storm had only just begun. I couldn't turn back now. The truth was there, glaring at me from every screen, every message, every hidden transaction. $43,000 wasn't just a number anymore. It was proof, a symbol of betrayal I could no longer ignore. And I knew, deep down, that half measures wouldn't be enough. If I wanted answers, if I wanted justice, I would have to dive deeper. I started meticulously tracking everything. Every bank statement, every text message, every phone call. I stayed up late into the nights, caffeine my only companion, eyes straining at screens as I pieced together a picture of the deception I had been blind to. Each discovery felt like a blow, yet also a spark. The more I uncovered, the more determined I became. There were messages that didn't make sense at first. Code words, vague references, sudden silences. But patterns emerged, subtle and deliberate, like a trail someone had left behind, thinking I would never follow. Each clue I documented, screenshot, and saved. Every word, every image, every timestamp became ammunition for the confrontation I knew was coming. It wasn't easy to keep calm around him. He still acted normal, or tried to. Smiles, casual conversations pretending nothing had changed. But I could see the cracks. The slightest hesitation when I asked about his day. A flicker of guilt in his eyes. And each time, I pretended to be unaware, letting him think he was still in control. I also started talking to people close to him, carefully, indirectly. Old friends, colleagues, anyone who might provide insight into his behavior without tipping him off. Pieces of his web of lies emerged like shadows, secret transfers, late-night meetups, whispers of favors done for someone I now knew he shouldn't have been helping. And yet the emotional weight was unbearable. Anger, sadness, disbelief, all tangled together, clawing at me day and night. I would sit alone, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of how someone I loved could orchestrate such deception. How the person I trusted the most could betray me so completely. Then came the breakthrough. A message accidentally left open, revealing a plan I had only suspected. He was coordinating with her, his ex, in a way that left no room for denial. I had proof, undeniable proof. The evidence was clear. He had lied, manipulated, and stolen from me, all while keeping a mask of normalcy. By the end of that week, I had everything I needed. Screenshots, transaction logs, conversations, every lie cataloged. And as I stared at the collection of evidence, a strange calm washed over me. The storm inside me was still there, raging, but I felt ready. Ready to confront him. Ready to expose the truth. But I knew the first confrontation would be dangerous in its own way. I couldn't just lash out. I needed precision, timing, and control. I had to make sure the truth hit him fully, left no room for excuses, no escape. And as I prepared, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. Every glance he threw in my direction, every casual comment, carried the weight of a ticking clock, a clock counting down to the moment he would finally face the consequences of his lies. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The web of lies was vast and the exposure had to be perfect. One wrong move, one misstep, and he could twist it, evade it, manipulate it again. But I wasn't the same person he had underestimated before. I had watched, I had waited, and now I was ready. I couldn't breathe that night. The walls of our home, once a sanctuary, felt suffocating, closing in on me with every heartbeat. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything I had discovered over the past weeks. $43,000 stolen. Messages, calls, secrets, all evidence of a betrayal so deep it left me reeling. Anger coursed through me, raw and hot, but I knew that letting it control me would ruin everything. I couldn't yell. I couldn't lash out impulsively. I needed precision, calm, strategy. Revenge wasn't about violence. It was about justice, about exposing him in a way that left no doubt, no escape. I replayed the scenes in my mind. Every lie he had told, every stolen moment, every time he pretended everything was normal while secretly stealing from me. I felt the betrayal like fire in my chest, but beneath it a strange clarity emerged. He had underestimated me. He thought I would never see, never notice, never fight back. And now he had no idea how patient, how meticulous I could be. I sat up and began my monologue, speaking to the shadows in the room, to the quiet voice inside me that had guided every discovery. You thought I would never find out. You thought I was naive, weak, blind. But I see everything now. I know everything. And tomorrow, you will see what it means to betray me. Sleep refused to come. Every creak of the house, every distant noise made me jump. My mind was alive with plans, the messages, the bank statements, the screenshots, every piece of evidence cataloged and ready. I even thought about who should be present when the truth was revealed. Friends, family, anyone who could witness the full scope of his deception. It had to be undeniable. Every detail had to hit like a hammer. I prepared meticulously. The proof organized. My words rehearsed in my mind. I imagined his face as he would finally see that the veil of lies he had draped over our life was about to be torn away. I imagined the shame, the guilt, the panic, not with joy, but with a quiet satisfaction that justice would be served. The night stretched on endlessly. I moved through the house silently, checking everything one last time. My pulse was steady, but beneath it, a storm of emotions roared: anger, sorrow, disbelief, and the sharp edge of determination. The calm I had cultivated over weeks now felt brittle, like glass waiting to shatter at the perfect moment. And then, as I sat alone, staring at the carefully prepared evidence laid out on my desk, a single thought consumed me. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, the truth will finally be mine to reveal. The night before the exposure, the house was quiet, but the tension was unbearable. I could feel it in the air, like electricity before a storm. One more night, one more sleepless night, and then the reckoning. The morning of the confrontation felt surreal. I walked into the room where family and close friends had gathered, my hands steady, my chest tight, and my mind clear. Every step I took carried the weight of weeks of discovery, sleepless nights, and the storm of emotions I had kept bottled inside. He greeted everyone with his usual calm smile, unaware that the walls of his carefully constructed lies were about to crumble. I could see it in his eyes, a flicker of suspicion, quickly masked, but it was there. The tension in the air was electric, each breath drawn like a countdown to the inevitable. I began, my voice quiet at first, then stronger with every word. I told the story, the missing money, the secret transactions, the messages, the lies. Every detail was laid bare, calm and methodical, yet charged with emotion. Screenshots, bank statements, and messages were displayed, evidence that could not be denied. He tried to laugh it off, to explain, to manipulate the room with smooth excuses. "It's not what it looks like," he said, voice trembling slightly despite his attempts at composure. But every word he spoke sounded hollow against the weight of truth I had prepared. I watched as panic began to set in. His confident mask cracked under the pressure. He stammered, searching for words that would absolve him, but the proof was unrelenting. Every lie, every act of betrayal, now confronted him like a mirror he could no longer shatter. Then came the moment that left the room in stunned silence. I revealed her involvement, his ex. Her name, the coordinated transfers, the messages planning the misuse of my money. She gasped, realizing that the web she had been part of was unraveling. She opened her mouth, but words failed her. The shame was written clearly across her face, and in that moment, her role in the betrayal could not be hidden. The room was still. The weight of the truth hung heavy in the air, and I could see it reflected in everyone's eyes. Disbelief, shock, and a quiet understanding of what had been done. My own heart raced, but beneath it, a sense of calm satisfaction settled in. The storm had finally found its release. He sank into the chair, defeated. His arrogance dissolved into raw guilt. Every glance, every attempt to justify himself was meaningless now. The people he had tried to deceive had seen the truth, and he was powerless to change it. And in that silence, I saw what guilt really looked like. He tried, he begged. He apologized, stumbling over words that once carried weight but now sounded empty. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said, his voice trembling, eyes pleading. But it was too late. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every hidden message, they had already shattered the foundation of trust we had built together. Nothing he said could undo the damage. I listened silently, letting the words wash over me like rain against a window I could no longer open. In that moment, I realized how love can blind us, how devotion can make us ignore the cracks until the truth rips through like lightning. The person you trust most, the one you believe will never hurt you, can sometimes be the source of your deepest betrayal. And yet, amidst the heartbreak, I felt a flicker of something stronger: clarity. I began to rebuild, piece by piece. The stolen money was gone, but it became a catalyst, a harsh lesson in vigilance and self-reliance. I took control of my finances, my time, my decisions. No one would have that power over me again. I focused on myself. Friends became my anchor, conversations became therapy, and slowly the storm inside me began to settle. I pursued things I had neglected: passions, independence, personal growth. Every day was a small victory, a reminder that strength isn't born from comfort, but from surviving what you thought you never could. The house that once carried echoes of deceit became my sanctuary of self-discovery. I learned to sleep without fear, to trust my instincts, and to reclaim the joy I had been denied. Emotional healing was gradual but real, the kind that doesn't erase the pain but reshapes it into resilience. Looking back, I understood that betrayal, while devastating, can also be illuminating. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths, to see people as they truly are, and most importantly, to see yourself in a new light, stronger, wiser, unbroken. The days that followed were quieter, gentler, but they were also filled with a different kind of intensity. I sought therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand myself, my pain, my trust, my anger, and turn it into something that could guide me forward. Every session peeled back layers I hadn't realized were still wounded, layers I had buried under love, hope, and naivety. I began to rebuild my sense of self, piece by piece. Small victories became monumental: managing my finances alone, making decisions without hesitation, saying no when it mattered, and most importantly, trusting my instincts again. I rediscovered passions I had set aside, hobbies that brought me joy, and a quiet confidence that didn't need validation from anyone, especially him. Forgiveness came slowly, and it wasn't for him. It was for me. I let go of the resentment, not because I excused his betrayal, but because I refused to let it control the rest of my life. Forgiveness freed me. It was my anchor amid the waves of memory and emotion, the quiet voice that reminded me I could move forward without carrying the weight of his mistakes. Reflecting on everything, I realized how love can blind, how trust can be misplaced, and how betrayal can feel like the end of the world. But in truth, it was only the beginning of reclaiming myself, my strength, my independence. The storm that once consumed me had cleared, leaving clarity in its wake. And as I sit here, thinking back on the chaos, the heartbreak, and the quiet triumphs, I understand something deeply. Sometimes, losing someone you trusted is how you find yourself again. The sun rose that morning differently. Not brighter, not louder, but somehow calmer. The chaos that had once consumed my life had settled into something quieter, steadier. I could breathe without the weight of fear, without the constant gnaw of betrayal pressing against my chest. I had rebuilt my life, not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I had learned how to stand taller despite it. Each decision I made now carried confidence, each choice grounded in the knowledge that I was capable, independent, and resilient. I didn't need validation from anyone else. I had found it within myself. There were no grand celebrations, no dramatic gestures of newfound freedom. Instead, there was a quiet peace, the kind that comes from knowing that the storm has passed and you have survived. I allowed myself to dream again. Small dreams, personal goals, new routines, and I savored each one. Life felt expansive, not because the past didn't hurt, but because I had learned how to carry that hurt without letting it define me. Looking back, I realize now that what I lost in trust, love, and money was replaced by something far more valuable: clarity, strength, and self-respect. I had been given a second chance, not by anyone else, but by my own courage to face the truth and refuse to be silenced. He stole $43,000 from me, but what I reclaimed was worth far more: my truth, my strength, and my freedom. And as I step forward into this new beginning, I know one thing with certainty. The past may have shaped me, but it does not control me. My life, my choices, my peace, they are mine, and nothing can take them away.